Okay, let's dive right into this. I want you to imagine the exact day you become the first millionaire in your family. You might think it's the day your whole life changes, but actually, it's the day everyone else's does. In today's Explainer, we're going to explore this really deeply personal, visceral story that unpacks the raw, emotional, and honestly often hidden relational impacts of sudden wealth. We are going to step directly into the shoes of someone living this incredible situation and see exactly what happens when money suddenly turns the lights on.
So here is the exact number, $1.3 million. The wire clears on a Tuesday for a business you've been quietly building for 11 years. A business, by the way, that nobody in your family ever fully understood. And you don't pop champagne, you're not celebrating. Instead, you're sitting in your driveway with the engine off, just staring at this massive number on your phone, and right outside, you're watching your 66-year-old father lying on a flattened piece of cardboard under your car. He's draining the oil himself because he wants to save you the $40 a mechanic would charge for a $10 job. He has absolutely no idea about the wire.
But then, your phone buzzes against the cup holder. It's a text from your brother. "Heard you sold. We should talk." Now remember, you haven't told him. You haven't told your mom. You haven't told a single soul. The deal was totally private, entirely handled by lawyers and a bank. Yet he already knows. You just sit there in your driveway, realizing your secret has instantly leaked. And it reveals this really fundamental truth. Money is the one secret that tells itself. Wealth just has a way of announcing itself, whether you speak up or not.
Which brings us to the really profound question at the very core of this explainer. What actually happens to your family the day your $1.3 million wire clears? Well, as we go through this, we're going to see how money doesn't actually create new family dynamics out of thin air. Not at all. Instead, it acts like a giant magnifying glass on the existing ones. It tests the three closest people in your life.
Let's start with phase one, the brother's scorecard, how we go from $40 to $40,000. So this character arc really begins at a family cookout. You start hearing these passive-aggressive little jokes, like, "Oh, careful around this guy, he'll charge you for the ride home." The family is laughing, but the laughter has a completely different shape to it now. Beneath every joke, you start to see these small, open hands just waiting for a handout, and you realize the hardest conversation of your life is looming with your own brother. Think about the crazy contrast here. 14 years ago, you were so broke, your fridge was literally empty. Your brother drove 40 minutes in the freezing cold to press his last $40 into your hand. He laughed and said, "Pay me when you're a millionaire." Fast forward to today. He sits across from you at his kitchen table, pitching this supposed can't-lose deal, flat out demanding a $40,000 investment. That original $40 has quietly rearranged itself into $40,000. He's not an entitled relative asking for a loan. In his mind, he is collecting on one. So you give him the 40 grand, right? Because you're desperately hoping to buy back that brother from 14 years ago. And 2 weeks later, he shows up unannounced, he climbs a ladder, fixes your sagging gutters completely for free, grinning that old familiar grin. You start thinking, wow, I was so wrong to doubt him. But then Sunday rolls around. That can't-lose deal? It loses everything. He calls you back, and there is no apology. He's just explaining why you're going to give him another 30 grand. And it hits you like a ton of bricks. The gutters weren't kindness. They were a manipulative deposit. It completely changes the definition of generosity. The moment you give, it stops being a gift and immediately becomes the baseline. You finally have to tell him no.
Which leads us right into the second dynamic, the mother's pressure, or what we can call the sliding scale of love.
Because when you finally give your brother that no, he doesn't even argue with you. He just turns around, walks down the hall to a room you can't enter, and recruits your mother into his fight. Almost immediately, her entire perspective shifts. First, the son becomes a resource. Suddenly, she's starting sentences with, "Well, now that you can afford it." Second, unconditional love suddenly shifts to a sliding scale. When you refuse to hand over more cash, she tells you, "He's struggling and you have so much now," as if the number in your bank account somehow changed what you owe her as a son. And finally, your boundaries feel like a betrayal. She's standing between her two kids, but she actively chooses the one with a story over the one who now supposedly has everything.
She actually calls you on the phone and hits you with this line: "Why are you doing this to your brother?" The cruelty of this weaponized question is just staggering when you think about it. The question has already decided you're guilty. Setting a completely reasonable financial limit is being treated as a deeply personal attack and a massive betrayal.
And what follows is this agonizing, escalating isolation. First, you notice the drop in room temperature. Seriously, every room you walk into gets half a degree colder. Texts are suddenly left unread. Then comes step 2, the Thanksgiving confrontation. You sit down for dinner and everyone is being painfully, awkwardly careful. until your brother across the table delivers this devastating, quiet blow, which leads directly into the final step, the deafening silence of the family.
He looks right dead at you across the turkey and says, "You didn't get rich, you just stopped being one of us." And you know what the most crucial point here is? Nobody at that dinner table defends you. Not a single person. Not because they all agree with him, but because staying silent is just way easier than picking a side out loud. The family's silence to that accusation is its own agonizing answer. It leaves you walking out of dinner early, heading to your car in the freezing cold, totally questioning your own reality, wondering if the money actually did change you.
Now let's look at the third relationship, the father's silent sacrifice, the hospital revelation.
That awful tension just lingers until a late-night call comes about 3 weeks later. It's your mother. Get to the hospital now. You rush there in a panic. Your father has had a major scare, but thankfully, the worst is past. The doctors eventually clear the room, and you sit down beside his bed. He is completely exhausted, and in the quiet of that hospital room, he reveals a truth about his 40 acres upstate. Now, this was your grandfather's land, the only thing your father ever owned that truly meant anything to him, literally the exact place he wanted to be buried. You always thought the seed money that got your business off the ground a decade ago came from his savings, but right there in the hospital, he reveals that he secretly sold his beloved father's land out from under his own feet, folded that money into your startup, and never said a single word about it.
You ask him why. I mean, why keep something like that a secret? Why let you think you built it all by yourself? And he tells you about his own brother, your uncle, a man who completely stopped coming around because your father lent him money once, and that debt became like a third person in the room until the relationship just died. He looks at you from the hospital bed and says, "I wasn't going to put a number between us, so I made sure there wasn't one to find." Having lost his own brother to a money dispute, he completely erased his fingerprints to ensure he would never, ever lose you to a debt.
And man, this creates such a profound, devastating contrast. Think about these two approaches to love. On one side, we have the brother's scorecard, which represents purely transactional love. Your brother gave you $40, but he secretly kept score every single day for 14 years. On the other side, you have the father's secret, true, unconditional love. Your father quietly gave up his most prized possession, the very soil he wanted to be buried in, just to ensure you had a chance to stand on your own 2 feet, and he never kept a scorecard. Which brings us to the final part of our explainer, turning on the lights and seeing what was always there. Now, you might be thinking a hospital scare magically resets a family. It really doesn't. Your brother doesn't suddenly pay you back. Your mother doesn't apologize. Families don't just reset like a video game. They just learn the new shape of themselves, and they keep going. But something inside you finally goes quiet, and this is the core takeaway here. First, money didn't change the family. Second, that heavy resentment you were carrying, it faded into understanding because you finally realized exactly what kind of person each of them actually is. And third, your expectations finally match reality. Sudden wealth didn't break the family. It literally just acted as a light switch, illuminating who everyone truly was all along.
And that brings us full circle, back to the driveway, a few months later. Your father's car is making a funny noise. Instead of letting him go to the mechanic, you tell him you've got it. Just think about this beautiful contrast. You, the owner of a $1.3 million wire, lying on a flattened cardboard box doing a $10 oil change. You stay under that car a little longer than you need to, just turning the wrench, finally understanding that he was never just fixing cars, he was speaking his score-free language of love. And now, you are speaking it right back to him.
Take a moment today to really think about the people in your own life, the ones who keep score and the ones who give quietly. Ask yourself, who is loving you in the dark?